So welcome back to another How to Country, and today we're going to be talking about greenhouses. And we have a local greenhouse owner with us today, Frank. He's got a bachelor's in business and also a diploma in greenhouse management. So he's going to talk to us about starting a greenhouse, certain things to consider when thinking of starting a greenhouse. Should you have a greenhouse? Should you not have a greenhouse? So Frank, what can you tell us?
Well, for starters, you should have a greenhouse. Everybody should have a greenhouse.
Okay.
That's something a conclusion I came to a while back, where I had an office job and I used plants for relaxation and regeneration. So I started out with a small greenhouse. That has since grown into a big part of my life, as you can see here.
So what are some things like when you're wanting to start a greenhouse? Do you need a greenhouse like this, or can you start with something smaller?
You can definitely start with something smaller. Probably one of the simplest greenhouses that you'll see is just a lean-to built on the side of a shed or a house, and covered in plastic or glass, and that's enough to help you with gardening.
So is there any big difference between plastic versus glass?
There actually is. Glass looks great in more moderate climates where heating is not as big of an issue, and light is more of an issue. Glass is preferred. Up here in the north, where we have cold winters and springs, but a lot of light in the summertime, having a single sheet of plastic is fully sealed, unlike glass, which has cracks around it or has many joints. So in this environment, a plastic greenhouse actually is superior.
Okay.
And the cost is less as well.
Okay, so when starting a greenhouse, what are the key things you would tell any person getting a greenhouse that they need to consider before even starting?
Well, it does make a difference whether you're doing it as a home greenhouse or commercially. But let's say for a home gardener, I would say it's nice to have something really close to the house, maybe even a sunroom off the side or a lean-to, or near the house, or something that you can go and check on your plants frequently. The larger your greenhouse operation, commercial operations, you can put it wherever.
Yeah.
But the more you're leaning towards commercial, the more room you need, not just for the greenhouse itself, but for parking and for room to move around outside.
Yeah.
Other things to consider, of course, are orientation to the sun. A freestanding greenhouse can be wherever, but if you're here in the Caribou anyway, if you are just going to do a lean-to off the side of a house, maybe better to have something that's faced east or east and south, so that you get the morning bright light without the crazy heat that you would get if it was south facing. Those are some things. Having a level, flat area is important. Here again, we have a fair bit of snow in the winter, or we can. So you certainly need to leave a buffer of room on each side of the greenhouse, so that when the snow slides off, you have some room for that. Just access to power or water would be other considerations.
Okay, and what about, can you just set it on the ground, or it's gonna blow away? Because if you get a windy area.
Yeah, a few things I learned early and still have a lot of respect for is the power of the wind. So, again, preparing for a greenhouse is often probably the most important part, where you need, like I said, you need a flat, a level area. And greenhouses are like airplane wings, and they want to lift.
Yeah.
A lot of people worry about greenhouses collapsing under the weight of snow. Many more greenhouses are destroyed by coming off the ground and being lifted off the ground and blowing away. So you do need to find a way to anchor the greenhouse to the ground. Smaller greenhouses can be pinned to the ground with stakes or whatever, but larger ones usually have concrete holding them down.
And you have concrete on your frame.
Yeah, each hoop here has, on this 40 by 100, has has an anchor that is 18 inches across by 3 feet deep of
Yeah.
concrete per hoop. So
Okay. So what are some of the main costs when starting a greenhouse?
well, the costs will start with preparing the site, everything from preparing the site, the greenhouse itself, which could be anything from a home-built little cold frame made out of 2x4s and plastic, to purchasing metal hoops, and then, of course, your heating system, irrigation, tables. All those things can add up very quickly, and sometimes are much more than the actual cost of the greenhouse.
Yeah, some people might just think, oh, there's the price of a greenhouse and we'll put it up, but they forget maybe the foundation or the ground prep or the things that go in, the watering, like you said, the heating. So with heating, what do you do for heating in this greenhouse?
Well, because of where we live, we have a real ample supply of wood. So this is actually heated with wood heat. I have had a wood-fired boiler with in-floor heating. Again, that is quite expensive. So right now I'm actually just using regular wood stoves.
Yeah.
Again, because I have a good supply of wood available here locally. Otherwise, you would choose something like propane powered or natural gas powered, or something else that's usually either heating the air or heating water circulating through the floor.
Right. And then what would you say for someone who wants to start maybe a greenhouse as a business?
It's a lot of work, yeah. And actually, we live in a world of global competition, and there are a lot of big scale greenhouse operations that really have advantages. So if you want to work on a small scale, really the only way that you can do it is to capture a niche market, to add value to people by knowing your plants, perhaps having a variety. I'm in a small market, but I have a large variety of plants, which works for me. Other people would choose to just grow tomatoes or just grow peppers.
Yeah.
And their approach to buying a greenhouse or building a greenhouse or having a business will be completely different.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
But check it out before you go. Everybody loves to grow plants, but sometimes they fall down on the marketing and selling and converting it to an actual business.
Yeah,
can
profitable business.
Can be challenging, exactly.
Yeah.
Labor is a huge component of the business. So that is important. Either you're going to be doing a lot of work yourself or you need some reliable help to make it work.
Okay. And then when actually starting your plants, what are some good things to kind of keep in mind? Maybe the soil, maybe watering.
Well, again, I can tell you about my situation here. I grow everything in containers. A lot of other people, or many other people, will grow directly in the soil, in the ground. So that makes a difference. If you have a good access to good soil and growing medium, you can grow directly in the earth. In my case, I'm growing everything in containers. So I start by growing the right crop for the right season.
Yeah.
Here in central BC, we have cold winters, so I start out with cold tolerating, cold loving crops like anything in the cabbage family, kale, broccoli, cauliflower, that sort of thing. They're going to love the beginning of the year. Later on, as it gets hotter, you have to convert to something like tomatoes or peppers or other heat-loving crops.
Yeah.
If you try to fight it, nature always wins. So I start by picking the right crop for the right season.
So when do you start usually in the season?
Well, we start salad mixes here. Anything in the cabbage family, like I said, kale and pak choy, spinach. I've started as early as mid-January, I've actually started seeding in December, but I found that was a little too early. Now we are starting most of our crops at the beginning of February.
Okay.
And that includes Planning ahead, we'll also plant our onion seedlings and that sort of thing early on.
Okay, and then you keep the greenhouse mostly closed and the fire going because
Yeah.
in February we're still getting very cold weather.
We're getting very cold weather, and here is your trade-off. If you have the time, you can do something as simple as lighting a wood stove, or else you need to have some propane-powered heat or natural gas, but that can add up quickly. So you need to make sure you have a return on your investment here in central BC. Elsewhere, if you're in a warmer climate, it's just not as important. But
okay, and then what about with starting your plants? What makes them healthy and making sure that you're getting a good, strong plant?
well, I start with the right plant, so the right plant for the season. But I look for varieties that are going to work in your area. You need water, warmth, light are your main ingredients to a plant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I start with.
And do you have any specific soil mix or temperature that things should be at? Or
I have a propagation room that has some bottom heat, and I start with a soilless medium, mainly peat moss based, and start my seedlings in that. I actually grow that right through my season because what I have here mostly is bedding plants, so they're often going out the door and heading for the home gardener's garden, which has nice rich soil.
Right.
Whereas I can just start out in my soilless medium and move it along, and it's at the maximum it might be here for 2 months, but often it's out the door 6 weeks after it was seeded. So
okay,
that works out pretty well.
okay. So what do you have started here so far?
Well, we're at the beginning of our bedding plant season, but what's been going for some time now are some of my salad mixes. Here's some cauliflower that just came out today, but it could just as well have been kale or anything else. These were planted less than a week ago, so I always ask the question, where is it going next? So when I plant a seed, so many of us just love to get started in the wintertime when it's dark out and we just want to grow something. So you start your tomatoes way too early, and by the time that they actually get out, they're long and stretched. So I always say, where's it going next? And so a cold-loving crop can come out a day, maybe 2 days even after it's germinated. I'll bring it out here, and then after a few weeks, it's going to be a seedling like this. It can't stay too much longer in a small pot, so it'll have to end up either in a larger salad pot like that, or a 4-inch pot or something like that.
Yeah.
And
it's just the same soil mix and everything.
It's the same soil mix
with some perlite, and then there's some lime mixed in there.
That's right. It's got. It's good to have soil that has good aeration, and that's why I use this soilless mix, because it has the heat expanded clay. The perlite provides good air in there, and something that'll hold the moisture nicely. And peat moss works pretty good for that. Yeah.
Okay.
Like a lot of mineral soil is just too dense. Like outdoor, what you would call dirt or whatever, is just a bit too dense and doesn't have enough room for air in it for seedlings.
Okay.
So you can also use your greenhouse to start plants for the outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
So things like onions, which I wouldn't grow in a greenhouse, I start my seedlings in February because they take a long time to go. But a seedling tray doesn't take a lot of room, and so you can get a lot of plants ready for the outdoor in a small amount of space. And that's...
And then some things like tomatoes, I guess you'd keep in the greenhouse because they love the heat.
Exactly. A greenhouse is just the best. Again, same thing here in the Cariboo. We have very variable weather. You can go from sun to hail in a short time, and vice versa. So this is a protected environment for for a heat-loving crop like tomato or pepper or eggplant.
Yeah. And then what about like venting?
Venting is actually critical. You need you need to be able to protect your plants not only from cold but from heat. It's one rule of thumb, and one thing you'll notice in the industry is that as each new generation of commercial greenhouses are put up, they're making the ceilings higher and higher, even in these cold climates. The thinking used to be that if it's too big, that's too much volume to heat. But in fact, when the heat comes, having a tall ceiling allows the extreme heat to stratify up there and down here at the crop level. If you're comfortable, then your crop is comfortable. Your room temperature for a house where we're comfortable is when your plants are the happiest.
Okay, that's good to know.
So about the venting then, for a lot of home gardeners with a smaller greenhouse, we'll just have a little vent on one end, maybe a fan. Often that's just not enough. You're better having something where the sides roll right up, or you can really open it up to let that excess heat out.
Yeah. And have good airflow. And that also helps with disease and...
It does. Air circulation is critical for a couple of reasons. One, for example, just the process of the air moving and making the stems move sends signal to thicken up the stalks so that you not stretch so much. But the other thing is that air is mainly made up of nitrogen, and people don't realize that plants need fresh air also for food, or CO2 and nitrogen, and so that's another reason to have some good air circulation.
Some greenhouses even have CO2 generators in them.
It's all true. Yeah. Actually, a lot of the commercial houses at the coast here in BC will burn propane or natural gas during the day inside the greenhouse, because that's the food, but they're exhausting their furnaces in the greenhouse for the food while they're heating water. And then at night, they'll just return that hot water from a storage unit to heat. But they make sure they capture the CO2 coming off of the propane burners. So a little trick that they use to get the maximum out of their propane, both heat and food.
So then with a small greenhouse, you said some of those little vents might not be enough. And what if, like during the day, I know some of the issues that you can run into with a small greenhouse is in the morning, maybe you work all day and it's cold in the morning and it's closed up because you don't want your plants to freeze, and we're getting below freezing temperatures.
That's right.
But during the day, it could get very hot.
Right.
So then you have a problem with venting.
Yeah. And some of this is just about expectations. I'm lucky because I live where I work, so I can check on my greenhouse all day long. But if it was a home gardener, you can't make a living on just a little greenhouse. So yeah, either someone has to be there, or there are automatic vents. You can get paraffin wax, louver openers. You can get roll-up sides with a little machine that will sense the temperature and then roll up when it gets hot and roll down when it's cool enough. For me personally, I like having a grower around. I think it's always helpful to have someone who's got the weight of the burden of the plants on their shoulders and is watching out for their
monitoring,
needs. Exactly.
Making sure everybody's happy.
Yeah, exactly. But that is definitely a challenge, having cold mornings.
And how often do you have to water everything?
Well, the smaller the plant, the more frequently you need to watch it. I tend to, with these smaller little seedlings, you can see already in a couple of hours that this has been here, the edges start to dry. So it's going to require attention a lot more than a larger crop or a larger container. The other thing is some plants just can tolerate drying out more than others. With my bedding plants, with my flowers, like to keep them dry and let them dry back a lot. It sends the roots to the bottom of the pot. It prevents, fungal diseases and things like that. Whereas veggies, a lot of veggies don't like to dry out. They want to have a good access to moisture all the time.
Okay. Is there a big difference between flowers versus veggies, starting them in the greenhouse, or?
Vegetables tend to be faster growing. Most vegetables are annuals and actually get up to size quite quickly, at least the ones that you need here in the Caribou. So anything in the cabbage family, broccoli, cauliflower, kohlrabi, Brussels sprouts, anything like that, will grow quite quickly. Other flowers actually tend to take a little longer to develop.
Do you add more fertilizer to the flowers than to the veggies, or you keep everything the same?
Well, here in my business, my plants go out the door when they're quite young, so fertilizing isn't as much of an issue. I'm counting on my vegetables going to the home gardener's garden, which has got the nutrition in it.
Yeah.
For flowers, if they're in a container, you're going to need to supplement them with some sort of liquid fertilizer or a slow release fertilizer that you add into the soil. So when it comes to watering of plants, a lot has to do with how much variety you have. If you have a single crop in a greenhouse, you can set up an automated watering system for that, because all the plants in that house are about the same age and are developing at the same time. So your watering needs are similar for the plants. When you have a bedding plant business with many different sizes of pots, different flowers, different plants, vegetables and flowers, then you pretty much have to water each plant individually. I happen to water by hand with a watering can or a hose, which is rather primitive, but the plants get the best attention for me during this season. Later on, when I just have tomatoes in here, then I automate with a drip system.
Okay.
But
yeah, so I guess it's simple or complicated, kind of as you want it to be.
exactly.
And so these are some things that you can consider if you want to start a greenhouse. And we thank you very much, Frank, for having us and talking to us. This is Frank's busiest time of year. You can see all the plants in here. And so we really appreciate you talking to us today.
Yeah.
So hopefully this video was helpful to you guys and you enjoyed the video. Please like, share, and subscribe, and watch out for more How to Country videos on ADTV.